Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to American Truck Simulator. This is David Steele, and this is my Mac R. Today is going to be something a little different. I've been conducting an experiment in the last few days, and I have been looking at different engines, different transmissions to see what makes a difference to American Truck Simulator. Right now, this Mac R is running a modified Cummins ISX. ISX brought to you by ZMods. And this particular engine, it is a 450 horsepower, 1750 foot-pounds of torque. But it's effectively rev limited to about 1400 RPM. So around about 1350 RPM, the torque reaches a peak and it tails off very quickly. Now, why have I done that? Well, I'm testing two transmissions. One is a short geared gearbox and one is tall. And the short geared, that's about 55 miles an hour. Let's go ahead and start up the engine whilst I talk.
Let's go.
Okay, so you can hear it idle. Well, the reason there is I've noticed with some engines that if you drive a little bit below kind of like where the torque starts to drop off, you seem to get reasonable mileage. And I wanted to experiment with this gearbox. Well, don't seem to have seen that so far. Let's turn on my lights. But it was still worth a try. So here's the Mac R. I really enjoy this truck. I don't know what color I would call this. It's a custom metallic, but I enjoy it. Alright, let's jump in the cabin. We have today a load of toys we're taking. This is a fairly short trip. And I switched to the tool transmission. So we're using a Fuller 9-speed convertible with a 3.25 final drive. So that's fairly tall. The other one is, the heck is that golf buggy? The other transmission I've been using is the same gearbox, but why am I not moving? There we go. But with a 4.1 final drive. Bit of an extreme, but it basically means that cruising at 55, with this gearbox I'm doing 1100 revs, with the other one I'm doing 1400, give or take. And the lights just go. What do you know? To keep things consistent, I'm using the transmission in automated manual mode. So it changes gear for me. That just keeps things consistent. And it's changing up at 1400 revs, which is what you'd expect because that's the way that the torque works. Now, with the 4.1 final drive, it doesn't feel that bad. Yeah, a little bit hesitant the way I described that. But it's not the most flexible. I mean, it's got plenty of go until it runs out of puff, and then it has to change up. So you go through the gears one by one. Well, that in itself is not unusual for the 9-speed. But with such a narrow power band, you're changing gear an awful lot. The taller transmission has an advantage. Oh, it's a little different trailer to what I'm used to. It's a double. It will affect the results somewhat. Okay, it'll be fine. I've been doing singles trailers around about the £35,000 point. This is the right weight, but it's a double. So the aerodynamics will be a little different. Messed it up. So the engine has a few other modifications to the setup. So it uses the ISX sound. That is not a very neat trailer pickup. As I was saying, it uses the ISX sound. It's my own set of torque curves. But I have, let's just say, killed economy. So its capacity is 11.9. That's the same as the ISX 12. But I've given it a fuel consumption coefficient of 3.0. So that means it assumes that the engine you're using, its size, well, it's 35.7 litres, and that's what it bases fuel consumption by. Now, cruising at 55, driven with the same gearbox, 3 different engines so far, I'm getting between 2 to 3 miles per gallon.
Get ready to turn.
Yep.
Turn right.
With my extra high pricing for California's fuel, that's been expensive. So going into this, the obvious thing is that the taller the gearing, the lower the revs are when cruising, and so the better your miles per gallon. Now, yes, you lose a bit of acceleration with tall gearing, quite a bit, and potentially a bit of flexibility. You've got to change gear more, maybe. With the shorter gearing, well, that was a big yawn. With shorter gearing, you benefit from more flexibility, sort of. And I say sort of because what gear am I in? 7th, and I'm doing 30, just under. So I've only had to change gear 6 times to get to 30. That might be more times. I think I'm in 8th in the shorter gearing. So you have to change gear more, which means it takes longer for you to accelerate sometimes. We'll see what it's like on the highway once we get going. So the engines I've used, well, the first one, I capped the power at 350 horsepower and used a lot of torque. So 2050 foot-pounds, so that's a bunch of torque with not much power. And the idea there is that the engine will be producing the same power at 1100 RPM as it would at 1400 RPM. Just a lot more torque with the tall gearing. Well, my tall gearing got me up to 2.8 to the gallon. My short gearing got me, it was up to 2.5 was the highest I saw. So 10-ish% difference. I did get as low as 2 and 2.3 to the gallon from those runs. That was what I expected. The next experimental engine I tried, well, that was a little different because there I flattered lots of torque at 1400 RPM just to see if that made a difference, and it didn't really expect it to. So power is a factor of torque and engine speed. Whoops, red light. But if the truck needs, let's say, 200 horsepower to be driven along at 55 miles an hour, and your engine can produce 400, it just doesn't use the extra 200 horsepower. It's at part load. So is it more or less efficient at part load? Probably. Can I tell with the resolution of the data? No. Okay. And the third engine, which is this one, is where I've given it plenty of torque, 1750 foot-pounds, reasonable amount of power, but it's limited at 1400, give or take. So right now, that's peak power, and then power's tailing off as we climb up the revs. So it has to change up. So it's a bit of a compromise. Let's set cruise, that's 30, 40, 45, 55. This is a shorter trip, so it won't take too long. What am I hoping to see here? Well, maybe the shorter geared model will be relatively efficient, but I haven't seen that so far. I don't expect that this will make a difference for this particular truck. I really don't. But we're still in 8th gear, I believe. Yep, so let's go for 9th. There we go. Oh, I lost my distance. 160 miles. Okay. Well, there's not much to say at this point, really, other than it's behaving as I expect. the higher the revs, the higher the fuel consumption. And it's what you expect going into this, that's because of the higher friction in the engines. There's lots of work I'd love to do with it though. I mean, a whole bunch of work. We can look at gearing, we can look at transmission type, we can look at engine size. So much work I could do with it. But where do you draw the line? So this is something I didn't see with the shorter gearbox, but I wouldn't expect to. We had to downshift going up that hill because the engine dropped out of its power band and the transmission saying, yeah, okay, we got to shift down. That might kill economy with this particular engine. That's going to be interesting to see what it's like, but I'm not going to subject you to this. I'm going to go ahead and put some bullet time on even. I'll be back in a bit. Well, that seemed awfully quick. It's not a particularly far, it's a distant trip, but there we go. Alright, well, I'm pulling into Reading, so
Turn right.
we'll see in a second how we've done. A couple of things I should mention as well, one of which is I've changed or tweaked some of the graphic settings. I've given my machine the extreme grass texture setting. So you can find this online, but it makes vegetation a lot crisper, and it's a bit more demanding on the graphics card. The other thing I did was I increased the view distance, or the high detail model view distance, I should say. So I was getting that annoying pop in on vehicles typically and signs,
Turn left.
and now I don't get that. So this truck in the distance, he's pretty sharp,
Turn left.
given he's so far away. Oops. I'm gassing and not taking my stop. Alright. Is this the right one? Yeah, it is.
Good
Okay.
driving.
To keep things consistent, I'm just going with the drop it and run option. Oh, sorry, I'm in a hurry now. Let's see what we've done. So 177 miles and 71.9 gallons. That's not how I tend to drive these trucks, but it's 2.5 to the gallon. So it's not great. It's better than the other truck, but by still that whole 10%. So it seems that there's not much of a difference. Engine rev seems to be the main factor. Kind of what I would expect. Well, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you've enjoyed today's video. You can subscribe for more. You can click like if you enjoyed it, dislike if you didn't. But most of all, have a great day. Thank you so much. Goodbye.